So as for the question, would I recommend the book? I don't think I would. I think there's definitely books in this sort of genre that I would recommend first. Hi everyone, my name is Tara Salt and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss our book of the week, which is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how you can take part in this online book club. We announce books at least 4 weeks in advance, and we accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message. 7-year-old Wen and her parents Eric and Andrew are vacationing in a remote cabin, where their nearest neighbours are over 2 miles away in either direction. As Wen catches grasshoppers in the front yard, a stranger unexpectedly appears in the driveway. Leonard is the largest man Wen has ever seen, but he's young and friendly. Leonard and Wen talk and play, until Leonard abruptly apologises and tells Wen none of what's going to happen is her fault. 3 more strangers arrive at the cabin with unidentifiable and menacing objects, but as Wen runs inside to warn her parents, Leonard calls out, "Your dads won't want to let us inside, but they have to. We need your help to save the world." So this is the spoiler-free part, where first we'll discuss any spoiler-free points, before moving on to a clearly marked section of the video which will contain spoilers and more specifics about the book. So as usual, let's start with those chapter lengths. I don't have an exact number, but personally I found them a little too long. I mean, pet peeve of mine, but the author did that thing where instead of starting a new chapter every time there's a new perspective, they just did it kind of wherever they were mid-chapter. And I guess considering that this was written in third person, it shouldn't have mattered all that much, but I don't know, I think it would have just helped with those chapter lengths, and that's what I prefer. However, I did really like the difference between Wen, the child's sections, and everybody else's. I thought that her character came across really well in it, and I just thought it was really interesting to witness events with her. Whereas I did frequently get mixed up between the two dads and sometimes some of the other characters. I just felt like they were a little bit more washed out in comparison. At first, I thought it was a really beautiful way of writing, but then it just kind of carried on. I mean, what started off to be a beautiful introduction quickly turned into too much information and too much detail that I didn't need to know, and it didn't flow quite so nicely, and eventually I just found myself getting bored. I rated this one 3.25 stars. There were definitely elements about this book, characters that I really liked, but I also just found it really lacking in other areas. Like, there were moments where I was genuinely quite surprised, but I think it just kind of boils down to the fact that the writing style just wasn't really for me. If I had to compare this to any other book, it would probably be something like The Last Murder at the End of the World or The Passengers. I have read a fair few dystopian books and stuff like that, but I've not really read many apocalyptic books, so while the undercurrent theme isn't really there, I do think that those books do have some things in common. Like, I think they definitely share a similar sort of psychological suspense that this book was going for. Now we're moving on to that part of the video where I suggest if you haven't read this book yet, go do that first, because beyond this point there'll definitely be spoilers. Okay, so for full disclosure, I actually watched the film for this first when it came out like 2 years ago, and I enjoyed it, so when I found the book in the works, I added it to my TBR. I never look at reviews until after I've read a book, but I could see that it didn't exactly have glowing recommendations, so it just sort of sat on my shelf since then, waiting for me to get around to it. Despite that, with Wen dying, No one was more shocked than me. Even now I couldn't tell you whether or not that happened in the film, because apparently I remember nothing, but in that moment I think the book did go up a star for me. Honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just sort of winging this. I don't like it though, I think. I do like it when a thriller isn't too scared to kill off a character, even if it is a really sad one. I'll give the author that. I really wasn't expecting that. And despite that very sad moment, I do actually think the ending was quite sweet. I mean, Wen's death may have not fit the rules that they needed to end the apocalypse, but yeah, fuck anyone who thinks that her sacrifice wasn't enough, because that shit was quite sad. I do think that if it wasn't for the writing style, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. I probably would have found it a lot more emotional than it was. I also felt pretty bad for Leonard. I mean, I didn't really care for any of the other characters, but he had an impossible job. I mean, we all know that the best characters here are Leonard and Wen. I mean, even the two dads were really annoying at times, although that might have something to do with just how much I liked Leonard's character. Also, Andrew had some pretty harsh opinions of what he thought of his husband. I mean, immediately he was looking at Eric like, "Don't you dare believe them, bitch, I know how dumb you are." So as for the question, would I recommend the book? Not that I think that people shouldn't read it. I mean, there were certainly parts about it that I really enjoyed, but I don't think I would. I think there's definitely books in this sort of genre that I would recommend first. Like, I think in the right circumstances, I absolutely would recommend it, but I don't think it would ever become one of those books that I just pull from nowhere and recommend for someone to read. So, will I be reading any more by Paul Tremblay? I wouldn't say no. I mean, I'm not reaching out specifically to read another one of his books, but if I did stumble across one that I thought looked interesting, then I could be swayed enough to give it a read. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book? Next week we're discussing The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, so don't forget to get your thoughts and comments in by Sunday the 2nd of February at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram or Discord. The following week will be The North Wind, but don't forget if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose a genre that best suits you, and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, it's always appreciated, and I will see you next week. Bye!